Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Great America Show. Thanks so much for being with us tonight. Very special episode tonight. We're going to be joined in just one moment by my good friend and our favorite weekly guest here on the Great America Show, the great Roger Stone. He's just back from a trip in the swamp, Washington, D.C., where he met with President Trump, Marco Rubio, and many other members of the cabinet to get a sense of what's going on, maybe kick them in the rear end a little bit and tell them where they need to fix and what they're doing excellent on. Overall, they're doing a pretty damn good job in what they're given. Now, there's a few who I think are questionable. Well, maybe not a few, just one. Pam Bondi. We'll see what she winds up doing with this Epstein stuff. We'll see what she winds up doing with this Russiagate indictments, because everything is going to fall on her at the end of the day when it comes time to prosecuting and persecuting some of these criminals who sought to undermine democracy, who sought to undermine this country, and sought to ruin an innocent man in Donald J. Trump and the people around him. Roger Stone, as you know, a victim of a weaponized Justice Department for years. But what was done to him, house raided at 4 o'clock in the morning with CNN sitting out front his house waiting for the cops to get there and the FBI and the federal agents to get there. How did they know an indictment was coming when Roger Stone's own attorney didn't know an indictment was coming or an arrest was coming? So for years, we all dealt with that. We all sat and dealt with it because we had no choice. The communists, the Marxists were all in charge. Now the party of truth, justice, and the American way is in charge, and it's going to rely on them and Pam Bondi to come forward and hold these people accountable for what they've done to this country. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This is something that we have all been waiting for with the return of President Trump. We sat and waited for years while they weaponized it against us. So now it's time for not retribution, but for truth, justice, and the American way to come to the forefront. You've heard me say it often on this show. There is no retribution here. Retribution is what they did to Donald Trump for the last 10 years for him running for president. That's retribution for an innocent man. What we're doing here, what the party is doing here, what the DOJ is doing here, is investigating the crimes and the cruxes of what these people have done for the last 10 years. So there's no retribution about it, as CNN or MSNBC or any of these far-left Marxist organizations want you to believe. There's no such thing as retribution with Donald Trump. He's never done it. And if you believe he does or he's done, why didn't he do it in 2016 when he ran on getting Hillary Clinton? When he ran and said, lock her up. His rallies, everyone chanted, lock her up. He was the bigger man, and he decided ultimately not to. I think in hindsight, which is obviously always 2020, it was the wrong decision on President Trump. Should he have prosecuted Hillary Clinton for her crimes? Maybe they would have fallen back a little bit to what they've done to him this past election. Maybe they would have. Hindsight, like I said, is 2020. But I think President Trump, if he would have done that in 2016, it may have been a little bit different this time around. Maybe not. I could be wrong. I don't know. But that's just my 2 cents on it. So as I said, Roger Stone has been in the swamp for the last week, meeting with multiple people. Tulsi Gabbard, he spent a lot of time with Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi, as you know, has been doing the Lord's work with this whole Russia collusion nonsense, getting it out there, showing us that the Democrats were the perpetrators of lies. We all knew it, but she's got it out now with documents, with receipts, as the millennials like to call it, out in front of the American people, to show them all, the naysayers, the haters, all of them, that this was a hoax against Donald Trump, that it was collusion against Donald Trump, that nobody in Donald Trump's circle, himself, Roger Stone, any of them, colluded with Russia. So now it's time for President Trump and Pam Bondi, and more Pam Bondi than Donald Trump, because it's not his job to put out indictments. It's Pam Bondi's job. It's now time for Pam Bondi to get to work and hold these people accountable.
You're still looking good.
I'm still feeling good. You know, I've got all your MyPillow products. Mattress topper, bed sheets, MyPillows, towels, slippers, blankets.
I'm interrupting this commercial to do something I've never done before. Get 2 MyPillows absolutely free on orders of $100 or more. I can't do this forever, so get on board with this great sale today. Our best-selling 6-piece bath towel sets or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Our famous standard My Pillows, only $14.98. Queens, $18.98. King size, only $1 more. Body pillows, $29.98. Multi-use My Pillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bed sheet sets. Any size, any color. So go to mypillow.com or call that number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all My Pillow products. And when you spend $100 or more, get 2 standard My Pillows absolutely free.
Roger, you are back fresh off a DC trip. I can smell you from here. You smell like a swamp. But you've got some good intel for us, I'm told. Tell us a little bit about your trip. I know you're a little hesitant, and you've got this rule that you went by. I'm hoping you'll break it today, that you don't ever discuss your conversations with the president. You told me you'd break it. How was the trip?
It was a great trip. It was the first time I was back in the Oval Office since Ronald Reagan was president, because in the first 2 years of the Trump presidency, I was blocked from the White House by Jeffrey Epstein associate Steve Bannon. And then in the last 2, of course, I was fighting the phony indictment in the Russian collusion hoax, which I think is a good time to give pause to the fact that I was charged for lying to Congress to hide Donald Trump's involvement in the Russian collusion matter, when we now know the whole thing was a hoax. So how is it possible to lie about something that never actually happened? But Judge Amy Berman Jackson specifically said upon my sentencing that I was convicted of lying to cover up for Donald Trump. Now, I met with 16 different members of the House. Articles of impeachment for Judge Jackson will be coming shortly because she violated my constitutional rights. She violated Paul Manafort's constitutional rights. Of course, she would hold nobody responsible for what happened in Benghazi. She is a serial violator of the Constitution. And on that basis, I think she should be removed from her federal judgeship. Now, I realize that that's very rare, but at a minimum, members of the House should arrange to send her a subpoena so she can come up and explain her various rulings and comments. See, I've looked at the Constitution very closely. Nowhere does it say federal judges can't be criticized, although she seems to believe that that's the case. Yeah. Nowhere does it say that the judicial branch is superior to the legislative branch. It is not. So we'll see what happens in that regard. But it is now clear that my trial, everything they put my family through, was based on a false notion that there was some Russian collusion, which of course there wasn't. And we now know that definitively thanks to the courageous actions of Tulsi Gabbard. So, look, this is not speculation. This is not investigative journalism. These are cold, hard facts. John Bolton, I think this guy's in denial. He says that she's exaggerated the evidence, or she is citing evidence that she doesn't have, which I immediately said, wait a minute. You mean like you and Dick Cheney and George W. Bush fabricated evidence that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction or was involved in 9/11? There's fabrication. Yeah. So, look, I'm not sure that John Bolton, I don't think he's guilty of a crime other than the crime of stupidity. But it is outrageous that he would attack a patriot like Tulsi Gabbard, who I think has done an amazing job of laying this out. And the other thing I can tell you, John, is she anticipated the denials of Barack Obama, who immediately pivots to the Senate Intelligence Committee report. Now, I can just tell you that report is a steaming crock of bullshit, that it is a paste up from the Huffington Post of every unsubstantiated rumor and false accusation. I think there's 5 references to me in the report. Every single one of them is false. There's no evidence to support any of them. Mark Warner, one of the great losers of all time, bought himself the governorship, bought himself the Senate seat. He actually had evidence that the Russian collusion thing was a fraud, but he suppressed it. It is a great day for America as all of this is revealed. And the question, which I think is on everyone's mind, certainly on yours and mine, is will these people be prosecuted? I'm not a lawyer. So people who are great lawyers tell me that Barack Obama is not immune from prosecution in the case of treason. I can't comment on that because I don't know for certain. I know that I believe based on what we've seen that he's guilty of treason, or perhaps it is a seditious conspiracy. Some lawyers argue that treason has to involve supporting another country. Of course, maybe he does work for the Communist Chinese. I'm not sure. But there's no question about Vice President Joe Biden, in addition to the millions that he pocketed during his vice presidency and in the years between his serving as vice president and becoming president. John Brennan, the arch villain of all time, a man who, as you know, proudly admits that he's a communist, said it, in a polygraph test, admitted voting for the Communist Party candidate, being a member of the party, a guy who personally signed and authorized the visas for 4 of the Saudi hijackers who attacked America on 9/11 when he was the station chief in Riyadh, a guy who got caught red-handed spying on a U.S. Senate committee that was investigating his illegal use of torture. John Brennan, a man who, if you believe FBI counterintelligence officer John Guandolo, and I do, actually converted to the most radical brand of Islam, Wahhabism, in an intricate ceremony when he was our station chief in Riyadh. John Brennan is said under oath that the Steele dossier played no role in their decision to launch the counterintelligence operation Crossfire Hurricane, played no role in their seeking FISA warrants to spy on Donald Trump and his campaign. And those, of course, we now know, thanks to Tulsi Gabbard, are lies. So above others, he needs to be prosecuted. James Comey very clearly needs to be prosecuted, lied multiple times before Congress, they all knew the Steele dossier was a fraud. Andrew Weissman, the single most corrupt federal prosecutor in U.S. history, a man who got his start covering up mob murders in Brooklyn, then used prosecutorial misconduct to destroy Enron, a case that he still brags about where he was unanimously reversed 9-0 on his convictions. But he still points to that as the gold standard of federal prosecutions. Weissman knew all the way back to the time that he was the general counsel of the FBI that the Steele dossier was a confection, a fabrication paid for by Hillary Clinton, yet they still use that. Plus the fake claim that the DNC was hacked by Russian intelligence. There's no evidence to support that whatsoever. In my trial, the federal prosecutor, Jonathan Kravis, who says his name Kravis, don't know why, but Jonathan Kravis filed a surreply in which he said the government had additional proof that the DNC had been hacked beyond the CrowdStrike's report, but for reasons of national security, couldn't disclose it to the court. That's because there is no such proof, and he defrauded the court. He too should be prosecuted, in my opinion. It all boils down to Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi, our Attorney General, and of course her Chief Deputy Attorney General, Assistant Attorney General Todd Blanche. They have to make this decision. I hope they make it, and they make it soon. I don't know why we need a strike force. I'm not sure why we need to study this. We need to impanel grand juries. We need to bring indictments. I think Kash Patel has gone about this correctly by investigating this as a conspiracy, an ongoing conspiracy. I think they can avoid the 5-year statute of limitations that John Bull Durham worked so hard to help them avoid. And I think we can also avoid having to go to trial in D.C. where no fair trial can be had, where all Democrats, no matter how egregious their crimes, no matter how much proof and evidence there is against them, will automatically be acquitted.
So much there, Roger, to unpack. First of all, I've known you for probably, I'd say 7 or 8 years, going back to 2018 with Michael Grimm campaign. And I know you to be a person of no bullshit, a man who you wear who you are on your sleeve. You don't pretend to be somebody behind closed door. And
very nice sleeves, I might add.
With you. And I think you're being far too kind right now for a man who's gone through what you've gone through, knowing the kind of person you are, Roger. I think you're being far too kind, and I'm kind of upset you're not getting red in the face with everything that they did to you, Roger. They tried to ruin your life. They tried to put you in jail. They did everything they can to get you out of your home and into a prison cell for however long they can possibly get you in there. So it hurts me to see you not so angry. Second of all, I've got to give you credit where it's due. You've been hot on Tulsi Gabbard long before she came into the Trump picture. For as long as I've known you, you've been hot on Tulsi Gabbard. So you were onto something, as you usually are. For everyone who doesn't know, if you've lived under a rock, Roger Stone, I give credit to for bringing Donald Trump forward to become president of the United States back in the early 2000s. There's documentaries on it. It's documented, well documented. President Trump, I think, has even said it himself. So I don't think you give yourself enough credit there for the man we have. Third of all, Seth Rich. It's a name that's not mentioned nearly enough. I would love to see every single document, every single file, every single folder on the Seth Rich case. Seth Rich, for you folks who don't know who he is, he was a man who was allegedly robbed and murdered, shot in the back of his head, walking home from D.C. late night. There was one problem with the robbery story. Nothing was robbed from him, not as much as a watch, okay? Man found dead in the street. It turns out Seth Rich, the day after he died, his brother flew all the way out from Colorado to pick up Seth Rich's laptops. Now, my brother gets murdered. The first thing I'm going to do, Roger, is get a gun to find who killed my brother. He flies out to D.C. to pick up his brother's laptops. Lou Dobbs goes on air and starts to investigate. Who killed this kid? Lou Dobbs gets sued from Fox and Sean Hannity. Everyone gets sued. We still don't know who killed Seth Rich, why he was killed, and what his relation was to the DNC and feeding them information on Bernie Sanders and Hillary Rotten Clinton and Julian Assange.
Well, let me say several things. At my trial, we wanted to bring Bill Binney in as a witness. He's a very famous counterintelligence IT genius who could have proven through forensic evidence and his testimony that there was no hack of the DNC, no online hack at all. The download times of the material that was allegedly stolen demonstrates that it was downloaded to some kind of portable drive and most likely taken out the back door. The judge, of course, would not allow that testimony. She also would not allow us to have the CrowdStrike's memo. The FBI admitted in pretrial motions that they had never inspected the servers of the DNC. They had relied entirely on CrowdStrike, a third-party left-wing IT firm, and that their report alleged that they had proven a Russian intrusion and online hack. But Sean Henry, the head then of CrowdStrike, who coincidentally just happened to be one of Robert Mueller's deputies at the FBI, testified before the House Intelligence Committee under oath that his memo actually didn't include any proof of such an online hack. That was also denied to us by the judge at my trial. So it is, I think the Seth Rich mystery needs to be unraveled. You're right about that. John, the Bible teaches that we are to forgive those who trespass against us. And I'm trying to be a good Catholic. But this week when I called for the prosecution of John Brennan and James Comey and Rod Rosenstein, perhaps the biggest rat of them all, people said, well, what kind of Christianity is that? And I said, well, it's the Sicilian kind, the eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth brand of Christianity.
Right.
So these people tried to destroy me. They tried to destroy General Michael Flynn, one of the greatest patriots and finest Christian gentleman I've ever had the pleasure to know, a truly great American. They tried to murder Donald Trump. They tried to bankrupt him. They tried to lock him up. They tried to keep him off the ballot, but they have failed. And now it's time to pay the piper. And no amount of denials by these people is going to work. John, it's just not going to work. Tulsi Gabbard is the most extraordinary political talent that I've seen since Ronald Reagan. She's not only beautiful, but she's extremely articulate. She's extremely camera friendly in a media age. She's very sure-footed. She's deeply principled. I can tell you definitively that there was a time during her confirmation hearings when one particular Republican senator said, I'm not going to vote for her unless she retracts comments she made about Edward Snowden. And someone in the transition asked me if I would speak to her. And I broached the subject, and she said, zero chance. I'm not doing that.
Good.
I'd rather not have the job than compromise my principles. I'm not going to compromise my principles. Now, in the end, that senator ended up voting for her. And thank God that they did. But she's going to be president someday. I'm not saying 2028 necessarily, but she's going to be president. I have no doubt about it. And anyone who thinks that she's finished with her disclosures needs to understand that there's a lot more material she's going to be continuing to declassify and release with the full support of the president. When I saw the president at breakfast last Sunday morning, not last Sunday morning, the previous Sunday morning, first thing he said to me, well, you were right. You're absolutely right. She's a star and she has my full support. She's doing great. So I think there were some earlier efforts by some in the deep state to try to undermine her. Senator Tom Cotton trying now to cut her authority, to end her ability to declassify documents, to cut the size of her staff, which, by the way, she's going to do herself. I think she's working on the plan to cut her staff very substantially. I'm not permitted to go into the numbers yet. But because I was told in confidence, but that's happening. Tom Cotton, on the other hand, this guy's disgraceful. I think some good Republican, some MAGA Republican needs to come forward and challenge the senator from Arkansas in the upcoming primary. I think, how could you be against what she is revealing?
Yeah.
How could anyone justify being against that?
You're 100%. Care to share what President Trump was eating for breakfast? I've only been there for dinner and lunch with him. I'm kind of curious what he eats for breakfast.
I can't disclose this at this time. All I can say is there was a lot of it.
Well, I'm sure you've been there when he's eaten a burger before and watching him eat a burger. Not the manner in how he eats it, but the way it's prepared it had me take it back. It was pretty funny. But
he likes his steak and his burgers well done,
and ketchup.
To each his own. To each his own. He thinks ketchup is actually a separate food group in itself.
You know what, Roger? It's worked for him for 70-something years. I think he's probably doing just fine. So we won't have to worry about that.
I hear every day about the products you all wish MyPillow carried. Well, guess what? We probably do. Slippers, bathrobes, pet beds, blankets, mattresses, sleepwear, loungewear, duvets, comforters, pot holders, aprons, oven mitts, and so much more. And they're all on sale. For example, get our best-selling standard MyPillows for only $14.98. Body pillows, $29.98. 6-piece bath towels or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bedsheet sets. Any size, any color, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all MyPillow products. And I've never done this before. When you spend $100 or more, you're going to get 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free.
Tulsi is absolutely, I think, been stunning in everything she's done. It's sad to me because I get a lot of pushback, Roger, when I talk about Republicans on this show who are doing a bad job. But it's people like you just mentioned, Tom Cotton, Lady G down in South Carolina. These people think that they can get away with murder. I won't mention Susan Collins because I know you like her personally, but we'll talk about Lisa Murkowski. These people think that they can do whatever they want and then be hidden under the guise that they're Republicans and that they're protected from doing whatever the heck they want. It doesn't work like that. When we were kids, Roger, you were a kid a lot longer than I was, long ago than I was. When you did something wrong, okay, and you got home from school or whatever, your parents weren't sitting there waiting with you with a cookie, Roger. Your dad was probably waiting there with a belt or a shoe to give you an ass whooping because you just messed up, and that's how you learn a lesson. In this Republican Party now, how it works is you do something wrong, you're given more money for fundraising, you're given more money in bills, you're given more power on committees. The thing is so ass backwards.
Well, look, I do agree with you. First of all, Lisa Murkowski now says she's not even a Republican.
Of course.
I really believe that when the Alaska Republicans sought to repeal the cockamamie ranked choice voting in their state, I think that election was itself tainted. I think the voters did vote to do away with that system. Only through that system she survives. Let's remember, she was never elected to the Senate. She was appointed to a vacancy caused by her father, who was the U.S. Senator. Then he got elected governor. Then he resigned the Senate seat, and he appointed his daughter to the Senate seat. I think that stinks in itself. And then only through ranked choice voting and millions of dollars from Mitch McConnell has she managed to hang on. I agree with you in this sense that I think it's very important that Donald Trump make an example of somebody in the Senate. Somebody who votes against one of his most important initiatives needs to be taken down by the Republican voters back home. And I think that will go a long way towards getting the Senate Republican caucus more in line with the American people and the mandate that we passed in the last election. I don't know when that's going to be, but I hope the answer is soon.
Yeah, we got to stop letting these people get away with literally metaphorical murder. They think that they can hold these guys by the – they think they can hold them to wherever they want and they get whatever they want. And it can't work like that anymore. Business as usual can't work like that anymore. President Trump tweeted out this week on Truth Social about recess appointments because he's having a hard time. Alina Habba, who to her credit in New Jersey is doing a hell of a job. I'm so happy for her up in New Jersey. But she's got the blue slips from Cory Booker and whoever the other senator is now in New Jersey, which means she can't be put forward before the Senate to become the next attorney, the U.S. attorney for the state of New Jersey. So President Trump did a little workaround, which is good. I'm glad to see that the Republicans are finally playing the same Mark Elias games that the Democrats have gamed us at for years and gotten away with it because I guess it's technically legal. So she's still now the acting U.S. attorney. So President Trump had to put on social media that he wants the Senate to take off for August for recess appointments. So how it works is if they're not in session for, I don't know the days, but if they're not in session, President Trump can do a recess appointment where he pretty much appoints the person without a Senate confirmation. Obviously, I'm not saying it for you, Roger. You know this better than anyone. For the audience, President Trump had to go on social media to ask John Thune that. I think that's so ass backwards. John Thune should just literally know what President Trump wants, and that's it. Done.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the Alina Habba situation because I think people need to understand it. That seat was never vacant. She resigned prior to the end of her period as an interim U.S. attorney. And then the federal judges there, of the 17 of them, 14 of them left-wing Democrats, they decided that they were going to fill the seat, which if the seat is vacant, they have the right to do, but there was no vacancy. So the president realized that the two senators, Cory Booker, who lives in Greenwich Village, and Senator Kim, who I found it up to here with that guy, they will not
He's
give
about that goal, so
that they will not give the blue slip, basically the acquiescence, just as Chuck Schumer refuses to give a blue slip for the epically qualified Jay Clayton in the Southern District of New York, the seat of all evil within the justice system. But he refuses, despite the fact that Clayton is extremely well qualified for that position, former chairman of the SEC, for example. So the president then appointed Alina to be the first deputy and leaves which makes her the acting U.S. attorney while the U.S. attorney's office remains vacant, outflanking a bunch of left-wing judges. The woman who the judges designated was Alina's first deputy, a woman named Desi, who was posing as a Trump supporter but never was one. She's busted. Alina's still on the case. And this was all done because Alina had the courage to correctly prosecute some radical left Democrat congresswoman who assaulted an ICE officer. That's not acceptable. There is no exception for members of Congress who engage in illegal acts of violence against law enforcement officers. So more power to Alina Habba for doing an amazing job.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the wheels of justice, I think, are finally starting to turn. But, Roger, if we don't get some sort of legit, and I've been saying this every single day because I think it's so important, and people are probably like, you sound like a broken record. We need justice in this country for people to learn from their mistakes. Just going back to what I said before, we used to get ass beatings as a kids because it was a lesson, right? That we learned not to do it again. Now, I constantly did it, as you can imagine, again and again and again, but I was probably one of the few who didn't learn from it. But if we don't get some sort of indictments of legitimate people, I'm not talking some low-level staffer, some low-level attorney like we got the first time out of the Durham report. If we don't get some legitimate indictments, John Brennan, James Clapper, James Comey, Barack Hussein, Hillary Rodham, whoever you want to go down the list. Now, I'm going to be a little pessimistic on Barack Hussein and Bill Clinton, or because, they're obviously former presidents, a lot harder to get them. But if we don't see legitimate indictments out of this, there is going to be a referendum, Roger, in 2026 at the ballot box because of people like you and I who have been promised so much.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, John. I think our base will not stand for that. The president's base will not stand for it. I think the president's made his position clear. He wants these people who broke the law prosecuted correctly. It's really up to our attorney general. And, in the end, I believe she will do the right thing, but I think we have to insist on it. Now, if she wants to appoint a special prosecutor to bring these prosecutions, that's okay with me. I would recommend former Congressman Bob Barr, who was a U.S. attorney in Atlanta, experienced federal prosecutor, a solid supporter of the president. He'd be excellent. Not Bill Barr, Bob Barr. If we'd had Bob Barr the first time, we'd be a hell of a lot better off right now than we are. But that's one name. David Schoen, the criminal defense attorney,
very good,
who represented the president, would also be excellent. Although I think that appointment is unlikely because he had agreed to represent Jeffrey Epstein. Everybody is entitled to a criminal defense, legal defense. He never actually got a chance to do that because, as you know, Jeffrey Epstein was murdered. I don't want to get side.
No, he killed himself.
Yeah, right. So I don't want to go down that road. John, it's been a very tough week for my wife and I because, unfortunately, as you may have seen, while I was in Washington for all these meetings, and it was great. It was like old home week because I hadn't been back to D.C. since my trial. Somebody tried to poison our dogs. Somebody fed them antifreeze, which by the way, is a classic way. Antifreeze evidently tastes sweet to dogs. Anyone who knows how to poison an animal knows that this is a classic way to do so. And somebody attempted to do that. We have twin Yorkshire Terriers, brother and sister, Mimi and Pee-wee. Pee-wee 2.0, because the original Pee-wee was hit by a car and killed the day I left D.C., one of the great tragedies of our lives, right up there with the death of my parents, if you want to be honest with you. The good news is that after several days in an animal hospital and thousands of dollars of veterinary bills, they're both going to be fine. It was kind of touch and go there for a while. So this shows you how demented the left is, how hateful these people are. They can't get me, so they decide to try to kill a poor defenseless animal. It's really outrageous, and I am very grateful to the thousands of people who sent their prayers and their best wishes. But the good news is both dogs are going to be just fine.
The good news is absolutely that the dogs are going to be fine. Anyone who tries to hurt animals deserves the chair, in my opinion, to hurt an animal. I've always been of that persuasion. So I can make this joke now that I know that they're on the right path and the right path to recovery. I never took you for a Yorkie kind of guy, more of a Rottweiler, German Shepherd. But now that I know, I'm going to be sure to tease you of that. Any idea who did it?
It's being investigated. I've been urged not to talk about it beyond that. Unfortunately, it does not appear that the security cameras had access or a look into the area where we believe this happened. Beyond that, I'm not going to talk about it because I'd like the perps to be caught. We shall see. We shall see. It just boggles the mind. Look, I was T-boned immediately after I first came out and said there was no Russian collusion. I was driving to an event, a speech. Somebody broadsided my car with no license plates, with a totally tinted windshield, so you couldn't see the driver. My car was driving in was totaled. Police never found that hit and run driver. So this is not the first time that there's been violence tried against me. But I'm still here, and I'm like the president. I will never, ever quit fighting, John. I just won't quit fighting.
Absolutely pathetic. I'm glad the dogs are doing well. If those guys don't get caught by the cops, I hope they get caught by somebody far worse than the cops, which I would rather happen to them than being caught by the cops, because guys like that just get off anyway. Roger, before we wrap up, I got to ask you one final question. You'd mentioned Bob Barr, William Barr. I've been of the mindset right now with what we got with Pam Bondi. It's almost like we've got William Barr 2.0. Do you have full confidence in Pam Bondi? Because I'll be honest with you, right now I don't.
I'm not going to criticize Pam Bondi. I'm awaiting these decisions. I mean, I think she's done some good things so far, but this is the big enchilada, and I actually have faith that she's going to do the right thing. You talk about Bill Barr, you think about Bob Barr. I was a big fan of the stripper Candy Barr, but that's a different question entirely. No, look. I'm not going to criticize any member of the president's team. I'm just not going to do it. There's plenty of criticism to go around, but generally speaking, whether it's Robert Kennedy, whether it's Tulsi Gabbard, whether it's Marco Rubio, I think he's fielded an all-star team. And unlike the first administration, we don't have people who think their job is to save America from Trumpism.
Exactly.
Their job is to implement Trumpism, because that's what the American people voted for. So the jury is out, as it were. But at the end of the day, I think Pam Bondi is going to do the right thing.
Yeah, I won't criticize anybody on his team either, because they don't deserve it. Everyone is doing a stellar job. She's the only person that I've taken issue with just for the handling of this whole situation. And by the way, Kash Patel, I think, is doing a terrific job. He's got some hurdles. So
I agree with that. Look, I think it is conceivable. I wrote a book in 2015, as you know, where I spoke extensively about Jeffrey Epstein. I had his little black book. While everybody in his phone book is not a pedophile, the butler who sold the book to a source circled the names of those who he thought were involved in pedophilia, or those who thought were witnesses. I also had the FAA manifest that shows you that there were a lot of big political names that went to that island, but they're all Democrats. Bill Clinton, multiple times. George Mitchell, the U.S.
28 times, Bill Clinton.
At least 3, based on the sworn testimony of Virginia Roberts Giuffre, who I interviewed for 6 hours for that book, read every word of her sworn testimony. And she specifically says that Epstein flew in 2 17-year-olds from New York, specifically for Bill's amusement and entertainment. Now, she doesn't know that Bill had sex with them, because she was removed from the main room where she was forced to have sex with some other man who was not Bill Clinton. But there's no question that he was on the island. There's no question that his right-hand man, Doug Band, was on the island. There is no question that he dumped his Secret Service detail numerous times. And as I said today, or maybe it was yesterday on X, Bill Clinton took Jeffrey Epstein's plane to fly to Brunei, where he got a $5 million check from the Sultan of Brunei. And the Sultan of Brunei and his brother are notorious pedophiles. He was also on the plane with Kevin Spacey, of whom there are at least allegations about. So those Democrats who keep demanding the Epstein list, it's going to ultimately get disclosed. They're not going to be happy when they see it, because Donald Trump threw Jeffrey Epstein over the side in 2005, long before he was even exposed as a pedophile, long before he was charged in Florida. We've been through this, and we don't need to rehash it. But there's no exposure. There is no danger to Donald Trump, who did the right thing. Virginia Roberts Giuffre and her lawyer both said the only public figure who helped her in her lawsuit against Jeffrey Epstein was Donald Trump.
Yeah. Yep, you're absolutely right. And Donald Trump saying today 28 times he believed that Bill Clinton was on the island. Before we wrap up, Steve Bannon, I'm sure a lot of people watch the show, watch Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon sat down with him for 15 hours of recorded footage. He should release that evidence. He's been very outspoken about President Trump. He's been going after President Trump, going at President Trump's neck for the whole Epstein thing. It's very simple, Steve. You've got 15 hours of footage, and you've met with him and you coached him after he was a known pedophile. Release what you have too.
Yeah, it's very, very odd. I mean, Sam Nunberg, who was one of Steve Bannon's aides, kind of his butt boy, he said that Epstein had agreed to fund a number of Steve's projects. He clearly was a fixture at Epstein's New York apartment. According to the New York Post, he also met Epstein at his Paris apartment. So this is after he was convicted in Florida on sex crimes. So we knew at that point what he was. What was Steve Bannon doing with Jeffrey Epstein? Why was he coaching him for 60 minutes apart, trying to get Epstein to look friendlier, less threatening, more likable, and specifically saying, if asked about his penchant for underage children, that he should insist that while the girls looked young, all of them were the age of consent, of course, which is a lie. So, yeah, I think it's time for Stinky Steve Bannon to come clean and tell us what he knows.
Yeah, a lot of odd stories about Steve Bannon that I've read recently that make me wonder. The acid-washed bathtub from his old landlord. I mean, very, very odd for a man to be out here going after Donald Trump, trying to make Donald Trump look bad for not releasing the Epstein files when there's far worse things out there about you. Don't throw stones when you live in glass houses, Roger Stone.
All right. So before we move along, people, of course, can listen to my syndicated radio show, The Stone Zone, every day at 8 p.m., 5 days a week on weekdays at WABCradio.com. That's WABCradio.com, 8 p.m. Eastern. Of course, then on Sunday, The Roger Stone Show from 3 to 5 every Sunday afternoon, also at WABCradio.com. And for all things Roger Stone, my books, my T-shirts, and my opinion, go to StoneZone.com. It costs nothing. StoneZone.com. I urge you to subscribe right now.
I'm going to ask my driver here in Istanbul, Turkey, if we can turn on the Roger Stone Show tonight on WABC Radio. Let's see if he can get out of here. Roger, as always, this is probably one of my favorite conversations we've had in the last year of doing this every single week. Absolutely insightful, as always. We'll see you next week, my friend.
Thank you, John. God bless you.
Thanks to Roger Stone, and thank you, folks, all for being with us tonight here on The Great America Show. We'll see you back here tomorrow, same time, same place, where the quest for truth, justice, and the American way continues. Same time, same place tomorrow, folks. Until then, may God bless you, may God bless America, and may God bless the great Lou Dobbs. We'll see you tomorrow.